the most wonderful people to be with when you're grieving don't need you to be happy. They don't need you to, yeah, but what's good? Can you tell me what's good in your life? Um, which I understand. We kind of want to orient that person to the good, but the way of feeling it is to allow them to, warts and all, say how they're feeling and be in a space where they don't have to be okay for others. So when people say, make sure you feel your grief, if you're stuck in a scenario where you have to be okay for everybody else, that's when it takes like 5, 6 years. And then the grief comes up when something else happens.
Welcome, friends. My name is Bill White, and I am one of the co-pastors here at City Church of Long Beach. My pronouns are he, him, and it is really great to be with you today. We have a special friend preaching today, so if you would welcome up our board member, Mary Van Geffen. Which is fantastic. Love having Mary up here and different folks. So we're in a sermon series right now. Today is our last Sunday, and we're wrapping it up. We've been talking about untold stories of the Bible, those stories that maybe you never heard before for whatever reason. And there have been some interesting ones, some kind of strange ones, I'll be honest. And so today we're looking at the book of Job. Now, I'm guessing some people here who have a more churchy background are probably familiar with the book of Job. I want to just see a show of hands. How many people are familiar with the book of Job? So about at least half. Oh yeah, we're going to release the kids. Sorry, did I not release the kids? The moms, of course, the moms are the ones who let the pastors know, like, hey, dude, like, let's go. Kids, if you want to go out with your fearless leaders, go. It's going to be amazing. Youth as well can go. Actually, I think youth are out as well. So yes, go. Blessings upon you, friends. Where I sort of lost track, where I was saying something really deep. Job. Yeah, so about half of us are familiar with Job. You know, it's that kind of Sunday. Everybody's minds, let's just admit it. Grief. Yeah, grief. Yeah, we're going to talk about grief. It's going to be amazing. Our minds are kind of on tacos. You know, let's just admit it. Can you smell did you smell it coming in? Like, it's just, you know, it throws us off a little bit. So this book called Job is a really bizarre book. It's in the Bible. It may well be the oldest book in the Bible. The oldest sort of, the Bible is sort of like a library of 66 different books. And Job may well be the oldest one. And it's really strange. Right? It starts off with this guy, Job, who's like super wealthy and happy, and then all of his family dies off. And out of this bargain that God makes with Satan, really strange. And so Job gets really sad, and then his friends come and hang out with him. And then for 38 chapters, the friends try to correct Job and tell him not to be sad, which honestly, it's not very helpful. So, and then at the end, God says, well, here, have some more kids and everything will be fine. And that's how the book ends. Job has a bunch more kids and he's happy. It's a really bizarre book, you know, but it's obviously for thousands and thousands of years, people have tried to figure out, how do we deal with loss, with sadness, with grief? And so we're just going to dive into that. It's a strange subject at the beginning of the year when you can smell tacos outside to talk about grief, but it just seemed an appropriate way, since in transition, there's always some loss, right? There's always something going on. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And I want to just kick it off with this one promise that Jesus makes. Jesus says this in the Gospel of John. It's a promise that for those of us who grew up who had the Bible promise book, okay, I had a Bible promise book. This promise was not in there. Okay. And those of you who are church people, you may not be familiar with this promise, but Jesus makes this promise in John 16, verse 20. He says, you will grieve. You will grieve. There will be loss. It's coming. It's a promise. So with that happy promise, I turn it over to Mary, who's now going to somehow make something brilliant out of this introduction.
Well, I felt like, oh, this is a big, important, sacred topic. Who am I to help talk about and unpack grief. I haven't experienced immense amounts of grief, but I am a walking grief sponge because I'm an Enneagram 4 and everything makes me sad. And I seem to notice things around me just in strangers that I then carry back home. I saw a mother thump a child in the forehead when he said he had to go to the bathroom yesterday, and now I will have to process this grief. And a child from Gaza came across my feed, and there's just so much to be sad about. And I appreciate you letting me be a part of talking about this. I am constantly feeling a yearning for what should be but isn't, especially with some cruel things happening in the government. And it's just a lot.
It's a lot.
And I feel close to God that he would say, you will grieve. Yes, I am constantly grieving. I right now I'm grieving something very specific. Where's my son? He's not here yet,
No,
but
he's-
oh, okay. Don't look at him. He doesn't like that.
Oh, sorry. He's over there. He's over there. He's
Over there. I am grieving the fact that I'm losing both my children this year. One to Barcelona for a semester abroad, and then I'm losing my baby to college in the Pacific Northwest. And that means, I'm losing two of my best friends. And that's a weird thing because moms aren't supposed to be best friends with their kids. What's wrong with this lady? And she's a parenting coach, right? But
No.
they know everything about me. They want to hear my stories. They make me laugh, and I'm losing them. And I'm also losing a part of me and who I thought I was. I thought that's my most important mantle, is that I am a mother and I tend to these people, and these people aren't needing me as much anymore. And so I guess I want to make the point before we get into the Bible and what it says, that grief is all around us. It's in process, and we're not looking. I think we do a lot of having arrived. Oh, that was grief. In fact, there's a great a quote that I would like to put up from Christina Cleveland, God is a Black woman. And she says, the only time people in in fact, I'm going to replace the word need here that she uses for grief. So the only time people in white man God's world are allowed to talk openly about their grief is when they are regaling themselves with tales of how they triumphed over it. We love to exchange stories about how we used to be homeless, but now we own a home with no mortgage on it. Where we were once illiterate, but now we are a New York Times bestselling author. We once struggled to manage our anger, but now we're a celebrated mindfulness teacher. Previously had marital problems, but now it is all good. In other words, it's okay to struggle as long as you triumph in the long run. Just please don't tell us about your grief in real time. Grief is only acceptable in the past tense. We prefer the Hollywood version because it helps us disconnect from the shame we carry about our own grief and humanity. Indeed, white male gods teaches us that we should be ashamed of our grief because our grief erodes all that is right and good in the world. So I just wanted to name that it can be lonely to be grieving because it feels like you're contagious and nobody wants to be around that. Don't bring anybody down, okay? So let's look at what the Bible says.
Yeah, so our friend Isaiah Wayopa, if you'd welcome Isaiah up, he's going to read scripture for us today. And typically we stand around City Church, if you'd like to stand. And Isaiah is one of the 5 folks who got baptized 2 weeks ago. Bam, love that. So the scripture will be up there, or you can read it on your phone, whatever you want. Here you go.
Just a second.
Oh, you're great. Take your time.
Right here? Okay. Job chapter 2, verses 11 through 13. When Job's 3 friends, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights. No one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was.
People of God, this is the word of God. You may be seated. Thank you so much, Isaiah. That was so great. He nailed those names, huh? Bam. And I forgot to mention about Mary, that Mary, like, besides being a board member, is also a parenting coach, which she does primarily through Instagram. And she has a book coming out, a parenting book coming out in February. February. Super fun. So we'll look for that when that comes out. Anyway, wanted to make sure we're oriented properly.
Thanks. So we want to talk a little bit about how you can show up for others that are grieving, which is in some ways learning how to show up for yourself when you're grieving. And so I want to put that slide back up, what we just read. Like, what do Job's three friends do? Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite heard about all the troubles that had come upon him. They set out from their homes, and they met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. What did they do? They went to him. That's 90% of the work when somebody is grieving, is to go to them, to move towards them, rather than, oh, I'll just wait over here for a few months until they're in a better place. They probably don't want to hear from me. I think it's a human inclination to think, I'm not the right person. I'm not the person to go to them, but you are the right person. If you're thinking right now of somebody who's grieving, guess what? You're the person that's supposed to reach out to them. And I think about my husband, who's had a friend from business school whose wife passed away from cancer. And he's like, should I go to the funeral? I mean, we haven't really talked much lately. And warning, I do make myself the hero of every story I tell. I just want to be clear about that. So I said,
Finally, somebody who gets it all right.
So I said, you got to go. Yes, you got to go. Nobody ever shows up for people who are grieving. Go. And so he goes, and he thinks when he gets to the airport, I could go hang out at the church for a couple hours. You know what? I'll just go to his house. He doesn't know I'm coming. There'll be so many people there. It'll be fine. I'll just kind of blend in. He gets there, and it's just this guy and his two sons who are grieving their mom who's died a few days ago, and the wife who's died. And they're just alone, and they light up when they see him, and they begin to tell him stories about her, and he helps tie his friend's tie. And if not him, who, right? I mean, he was thinking of not going, and he ended up being like the guy. And I think there's so many stories about that. We can't run from grief. I had an acquaintance whose husband died. I didn't really know her that well. And I happened to be in women's ministry at the time. And they were like, yeah, you should probably go check her out. So I go to her house. And the next thing you know, she's like, we need to write an obituary. It's due now. And I'd never met this guy. And so we're working together to write the obituary. I don't think that's going to happen when you go to somebody who's grieving.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's encouraging us to like.
Okay.
No, that's fine. Keep going.
My point just being is that other people aren't stepping forward. So it is you. If you have that little like tingle that says, maybe it's me, it is you. The last story I'll share is that I have a coworker who has long COVID. And that means she and her daughter are so immune compromised that if they catch it again, they just could die, could be debilitating. And so can't go anywhere. She can't go and be with people. And we get on these Zooms, and I'm scared to say, how are you? Do you ever have a friend like that where you're worried that if you say, how are you, do you want to get into it today? But I have been asking, how are you? And she's been sharing how she is, which is not good. And I listen. And the other day she said, can I just tell you that you are a textbook, again, I'm the hero, right? You guys are getting that. That you're giving me textbook support on grieving. Thank you. And I didn't do anything, guys. I'm just open to hearing about it. And that would be my number one thing, is go to this person.
Yeah, 90% of it is just showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's probably someone in each of our minds right now that we could actually send a text message to, right? Or show up at their house, right? It's so beautiful. Thanks, Mary. The next thing that happens in this little passage where these friends actually do it right. First is they show up, and second, this is what it says. Listen to this in verse 12. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. Do you hear the energy in that? Like, grief changes people. It just does. And maybe it's you who's grieving, or maybe it's a friend or a family member who's grieving, but people go all sorts of interesting places when they grieve. Like, some people become super ornery. Some people become super busy. Some people become promiscuous, or some people become, I mean, there's 1,000 different ways that we handle loss in our life, whether it's the loss of a loved one through death, loss of a job, whether it's just the fact that we graduated from junior high and now we're in senior high and we're missing all those teachers in that smaller campus, right? And we react in different ways. We take that out on other people because it's so hard. It's so hard to go on the journey ourselves, right? So when Job's friends show up, they're like, who is that? Like, this person is a mess in their own way. And that's you. You're a mess in your own way. And I'm a mess in my own way. And our loved ones are messes in their own way. So what do we do with that? And there's an invitation. I think what Mary was just sharing is like, well, you still go to them. And maybe you still go to yourself, right? Maybe you still visit yourself. There's a woman, Mirabai Starr, who has written extensively about grief. And she lost a daughter in a car accident. And she writes this. She says, there's no map for the landscape of loss. No established itinerary, no cosmic checklist where each item ticked off gets you closer to success. You cannot succeed in mourning your loved ones. You cannot fail, nor is grief a malady like the flu. You will not get over it. You will only come to integrate your loss. The death of a beloved is an amputation. You find a new center of gravity, but the limb does not grow back. And that image, I mean, it's really stark, right? You lose a limb, and so now you walk different. You move around different because your weight's a little different. But you do learn new ways. And some of us here, maybe we lost a church that we really loved and we got kicked out. Right. And maybe they're just small losses in our life. I mean, so Mary, you're an empty nester. I remember, like, so my daughter was a senior in high school, and my daughter does not like cheese. It's important information. So I remember I go to Costco after my daughter is moving out, right? And my son's already out. And I go to Costco and I look at this amazing, I've always looked at their macaroni and cheese, the pre-made macaroni and cheese. It looks so good. And I look at the macaroni and cheese and I say, oh my gosh, I could finally get the macaroni and cheese. And right in Costco, I burst into tears. I just start bawling. I'm like, get close to the macaroni and cheese. So the people behind you, like, just pretend you're looking at the label. I'm bawling. I'm like, I don't want macaroni and cheese. I want my daughter. I'm just bawling because grief is, it changed. You're like, I'm a madman in Costco weeping in front of the macaroni and cheese. Who is this? Right? And I'm out of balance. I feel like this. So my daughter just graduated. She's been out of the house for 6 years now. My son has been out for 9 years. And I'm sorry, Mary. I feel like this is, I would say, I don't know what you would say, Katie. Katie's my wife. But I feel like we're finally getting our groove.
Wow. It's like, you will not get over it, is what it said up there.
Yeah, you don't get over it. Because it changes you and you have to find a new center of gravity. You're walking with a limp now.
And we all know about birth pains. Birth pains come in, like, they roll in and they get really, and then they go away. And you're like, hey, you know what? I think I could drink a Diet Coke right now. And then they come back again, and and you can't stand. And it's the same with grief pains when something has died. It's okay that in 1 minute we're crying over the mac and cheese, and then a few hours later we're laughing. That's normal. That's what grief looks like, especially with children who can't hold it all the time. So I think we want you to go to somebody who's grieving. We want you to be aware that they are going to be different, that it changes you. But I also want you to, to feel their pain. And let's look at what they say here in Job. They began to weep aloud, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. They sat in it with Job. It wasn't like, oh yeah, it wasn't watching. And that's what makes it so hard to be with somebody in grief. But figuring out how do you feel it with them? And people always say, oh, don't push it down. Make sure you feel it. Yeah, but how? Tell me how to do that and hold down my job. Tell me how to do that and show up for other people. And one way is to not try to fix the person who's grieving. It's set up there, you will not fail. I like that part. You will not fail at showing up for somebody in grief as long as you don't need them to be a certain way for you. You to be happy. They don't need you to, yeah, but what's good? Can you tell me what's good in your life? Which I understand. We kind of want to orient that person to the good, but the way of feeling it is to allow them to, warts and all, say how they're feeling and be in a space where they don't have to be okay for others. So when people say, make sure you feel your grief, if you're stuck in a scenario where you have to be okay for everybody else, that's when it takes like 5-6 years, and then the grief comes up when something else happens. So when you can, having those spaces.
I think, don't you have a magical gift for us? Do we have that? Do we have that picture?
I have
look at this. Look at this.
I don't know when I made this. Does it have a date? No. I have a 10-hour grieving
10
Spotify
hours.
playlist. Okay, I told you I'm the right person for this talk. Some of them, like, I want you to just fast forward if they're not your jam. These happen, this is in alphabetical order, but just songs that can hack your crying and get you into that place when you're like, okay, I got 30 minutes and then I got to get to work. Okay, I'll be sad for a minute. I will allow it. Music, so powerful at helping us feel. And I would even say, take it one step further and try cry dancing. Cry dancing is playing a song that gets you into a place and then letting your body move however it wants. I have cry danced over Gaza multiple times, just because it's all trapped in here. And so moving to music, do it. It will help. Grief reminds me a little bit of a child's meltdown. And that's what I do. I help parents whose kids melt down a lot. And it's not necessarily what you do during a tantrum, it's who you be. So you don't have to do anything right. You just have to kind of manage yourself, check in with your own breathing, be present, maybe tell yourself they're not okay right now, and that's okay. I can still be okay when they're not okay. That's still helping them feel it, feeling it with them. It's just being with them. It's not doing anything. So you have to ask yourself, are you willing to enter into that tent of feelings with somebody? Can you be okay? I have one last little trick that I give to parents. And that's when you have a child who's just, their feelings are so contagious. And sometimes we have a friend whose grief is so contagious. It's like, I don't know if I can do this today. And what you do, so this is so woo-woo-y and probably not Christian, but you take your hand down at your sacrum and you imagine that you're zipping up like a golden bubble. And you're telling yourself, like, I'm zipping up. Everything inside is me and everything outside is others. And I can sit with somebody in deep pain and I can still sort of be in charge of my own ecosphere. And so you just, like, they might see you going like this. You're like, oh no, nothing. I'm just gonna. just kind of helps you be you.
So if you see Mary doing that,
If you're walking up and I'm like, because we want to walk through the shadow, the valley of the shadow of death with people. And sometimes that we might need a little bit of support in doing that.
those were so helpful,
Mhm.
so practical. I want to think just a little bit about the process of grief and how it takes time. You kind of talked a little bit about that earlier, and we both have a little bit, but listen to this in Job chapter 2, verse 13. It says that these are the friends. Then the friends sat on the ground with Job for 7 days and 7 nights. All right, it's a long time. Right? They just sat on the ground. I don't know if there are folks here from a Jewish background, but typically it's called sitting Shiva. In a Jewish context, Shiva is the word for 7. It's the kind of a Jewish approach to grief that's ancient. And typically when you come into someone's house to sit Shiva, they take out the chairs and they just have like little boxes to sit on. It kind of gets you closer to the ground and reminds you that you're just here to sit, just to be, and to be there for a while. And so for 7 days, you actually don't say anything to these folks. You're just with them. You're just present. Because grief, it takes a long time, and there are different stages of it, right? And it comes like, I love the picture of childbirth, like the waves of contractions coming and going, and it's just so helpful. I have a friend, a dear friend, who lost her mom when she was 17, and because of the chaos of her life, I mean, it transformed her life. But what happened? She had 3 daughters, and as her daughters became teenagers, it just all of a sudden all this stuff just started coming back, right? All this stuff started coming back, and so. She lived in Vermont at the time, and she scattered her mom's ashes on this mountain called Camel's Hump. And so when her middle daughter left her teenage years and turned 20, my friend Audra, she decided to commemorate that she had lived long enough to be with her daughter all the way through her teen years. And so this is a picture of Camel's Hump. You see that? That's her leg, and that's her daughter's leg. Celebrating. This is like over 30 years later. The grief is still there. And it comes up in different ways. And that's okay. So we pay attention to that in ourselves, and we pay attention to that in our loved ones. Right? And we honor that in various ways. So my dad died in 2012. My mom died in 2022. So it was 10 years apart. But when my dad passed, I was at a great big church that had no policy for days off for things like that. There was tons of drama on the pastoral team, and it was super messy. So I went back to the funeral, I came back, and I just basically didn't grieve the loss of my dad. And so when my mom got diagnosed with cancer, and she had about a 9-month run, and she lived in Virginia. I went to Virginia 10 times that year, which, just so you know, it's kind of a long ways. And it was the best thing. And I cried all the time. And partly as I started therapy, which I hadn't done before, and big fan. And so I realized, talking to my therapist, like, oh my gosh, I keep crying about my dad and not my mom. My mom is still alive. And I'm crying all the time about my dad because I hadn't grieved my dad 10 years earlier. Like, welcome to the journey. It's going to take some time. And the little grief and the big grief That's just part of the process of being human and letting it in. And so what if we honored that about ourselves and about others? Didn't try to force them or force ourselves to stop it. Tell me something good, right? But what if we listened to the playlists, right? We did the grief dance, these sorts of things, right? Like, oh my gosh, maybe we would heal. Maybe we would heal. And with that, notice that as they sat for those 7 days, it says they sat in silence. It said no one said a word to him because they saw how great his suffering was. It's this approach to grief where you're not trying to fix. Like, you don't have to fix yourself. You don't have to fix others. You can just be. You can just be.
There is a Navy SEAL who wrote a book that is kind of about the whole process of becoming a Navy SEAL and all that you go through it. And he noticed that during Hell Week, I don't even know what they do during Hell Week, that those who thought about all the suffering and the misery that was coming for them, most of them dropped out. And that prospect of like all the stress was just too much for them to think about. But the successful candidates took a different approach. They just thought about the next meal because hot food was a big deal. Like they made it through Hell Week simply by focusing on the next meal, like what would be for breakfast. And there's great wisdom in just sitting in it, trying not to die, and thinking about the next meal. And may we be with people who are in that place and help them feel like there's nothing wrong with them. Like you heard how long you're still in the grieving process for your parents. If you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, but I just can't get it. It's okay. You don't have to get over it. You have to figure out how to integrate that grief into who you are and just make it to breakfast. Okay.
Love that. Mary, would it be okay if I just asked you one question?
Oh yeah. And then I get to ask you a question. Damn, should I ask?
No. So your kids are moving out. One is gone. One is going relatively soon. What as and maybe you wouldn't say you're actively grieving now. Maybe you are. I'm not sure. But
Pre-grieving.
Pre-grieving. What is pre-grieving and how does that work? And kind of where are you at now with just that transition?
Well, for me, pre-grieving is packing anxiety. I don't know why they're connected, but my husband and I are going to go on an epic grieving van trip after we drop off the boy up north. And we're going to be in a Sprinter van and we're going to take 7 to 10 days together. And I am so stressed about what will I pack. And I can see it from outside that I'm getting into this minutia of something I might be able to control. I gotta have the right headphones because he's gonna talk to me the whole time, that kind of thing. And really, I know that's a displaced grief. I would like to pre-grieve. I don't know that we can, and I don't know that makes our relationships any better. So I'm just trying to stay super present. And if my dude's like, "Hey, you want to go get a acai bowl?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, yes, I do want to get a acai bowl with you." So I just say yes to anything, and I'm trying to have less on the schedule and just being gentle with myself.
Yeah. And I love that you're recognizing that some of the packing is like your chance to like control something because you can't control the loss. Good. All right. And if you want to ask a question, you can, but you don't have to. I could get off easy again.
What keeps you, who showed up for you when you were grieving that helped you grieve better, if that's a thing?
Yeah, no, it is a thing. So my best friend who's spoken here once before, he lives in Indiana, and so of course he flew out for My dad's funeral, flew up for my funeral. I mean, my mom's funeral. He might fly out for that one too, I guess. But and was just, he didn't say much. He just, we would play a game sometimes late at night, or he'd go and run to the grocery store and get me some stuff. But and then we'd take these trips, and so we take them every year, and we have a set of questions that we ask each other. We're just weird like that. So we write down questions, and so he would ask questions about, what are some of your best memories about your mom? And so we'd have that in advance, and I'd be thinking a bit about it, and we'd be out in a canoe on a lake somewhere, and it'd become that turn to share. And that's just been really sweet, to have a friend who could be there in the moment and not say much, and then recognize, a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, hey, what do you remember most about your mom? What do you miss? And that's been a gift. Yeah.
Thank you.